The emergency alert on my phone screamed at exactly 3:15 in the morning, and I knew before I even looked outside that this was going to be bad. I'm Ryan Morrison, Emergency Services Coordinator for Douglas County, Colorado, and I'd been tracking this blizzard for 3 days straight. The National Weather Service had upgraded it from a winter storm watch to a blizzard warning 12 hours ago. And now it was here with a vengeance that made the 2019 bomb cyclone look tame. I rolled out of bed and immediately checked the weather radar on my laptop. The massive system had stalled directly over the Front Range, dumping snow at rates exceeding 3 inches per hour. Wind gusts were already hitting 60 miles per hour, creating whiteout conditions across the entire county. My phone buzzed again. Text from the sheriff's office. Multiple vehicles stranded on Highway 85. School bus stuck on County Road 12 with 15 kids still inside. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. I pulled on my thermal layers, grabbed my emergency services jacket, and headed downstairs. My modified Ford F-250, with the county-issued snowplow attachment, was parked in the driveway of my house in Meadowbrook Estates, the HOA-controlled subdivision where I'd made the mistake of buying property 2 years ago. At the time, the reasonable HOA fees and well-maintained common areas seemed worth the trade-off of dealing with a few petty rules. I'd quickly learned that Meadowbrook Estates was run by a board of busybodies who treated every minor infraction like a federal crime, led by their president, Patricia Henderson, a 52-year-old former real estate agent who'd apparently found her true calling in making residents' lives miserable. The cold hit me like a physical wall when I opened the garage door. Snow was already piled 18 inches deep in my driveway, and it was still coming down in sheets. I fired up the truck, letting it warm while I did a quick equipment check. The plow attachment was secure. Chains were in the bed, emergency medical kit fully stocked, satellite phone charged. I had 3 different radios mounted in the cab. One for county emergency services, one for fire and rescue, and one for law enforcement. All 3 were already crackling with urgent traffic. I backed out of the driveway, engaged the plow, and started clearing the street. Our subdivision streets weren't county-maintained, which meant they'd be last on the city's priority list. I figured while I was heading out, I might as well clear the main route through Meadowbrook Estates. My neighbors would appreciate it, and it would give emergency vehicles access if needed. The subdivision had about 200 homes, mostly young families and retirees. The snow was heavy and wet, perfect for creating the kind of drifts that trapped vehicles and collapsed roofs. I worked my way down Sycamore Lane, pushing the accumulation to the sides, my orange emergency lights cutting through the white darkness. It was slow going. The wind kept pushing snow back across the cleared sections almost as fast as I could move it. My radio crackled. All units, we've got a report of a roof collapse at the elementary school on Morrison Road. Unknown if anyone's inside. Fire rescue is responding, but they're delayed due to road conditions. I grabbed the radio. This is Morrison, Emergency Services Coordinator. I'm 10 minutes from that location. Responding now. I turned the truck toward the subdivision exit, increasing speed as much as the conditions allowed. That's when I saw the flashing lights behind me. Blue and white LED strobes mounted on a white SUV with Meadowbrook Estates HOA security emblazoned on the side. You've got to be kidding me. The security vehicle pulled alongside me, and I recognized Dennis Cartwright, the 20-something kid the HOA had hired as their enforcement officer. He rolled down his window, shouting over the wind, "Sir, you need to stop immediately. You're in violation of HOA regulations." I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious right now? I'm responding to an emergency. The HOA has regulations about commercial vehicles and equipment in the subdivision. That plow attachment isn't approved. Dennis, I don't have time for this. There's a possible building collapse with potential casualties. I'm the emergency services coordinator for the county. This is official business. Sir, if you don't comply, I'll have to report this to Mrs. Henderson. I didn't bother responding. I hit the gas, or as much gas as you could hit in 2 feet of snow, and headed for the subdivision gates. Dennis followed me all the way out, but once I was on the main road, he dropped back. I put the encounter out of my mind. I had actual emergencies to deal with. The next 6 hours were a blur of crisis after crisis. The roof collapse at the elementary school turned out to be partial, and thankfully the building was empty. But that was just the beginning. We had a multi-vehicle pileup on Interstate 25 with injuries. A nursing home lost power and needed evacuation. 2 separate incidents of carbon monoxide poisoning from people running generators in attached garages. A heart attack victim who required transport to the hospital through impassable roads. I coordinated response teams, directed snow removal equipment, and personally transported medical personnel when ambulances couldn't get through. By 9 in the morning, the snow had finally started to taper off. We'd received 31 inches in total, with drifts exceeding 6 feet in some areas. The governor had declared a state of emergency. Interstate 25 was closed from Colorado Springs to Wyoming. Douglas County was effectively shut down, but we'd managed to respond to every critical emergency. No deaths, minimal injuries considering the severity of the storm. I'd been awake for nearly 30 hours straight and running on nothing but adrenaline and gas station coffee. I finally headed home around 10 in the morning. The main roads were still treacherous but passable. When I turned onto Sycamore Lane, I noticed the streets I'd plowed earlier were still relatively clear. My neighbors had apparently been out with shovels and snow blowers, keeping the paths open. A few of them waved as I drove past. Mrs. Chen, the retired teacher next door, had even cleared my front walk. That's when I noticed my driveway was empty. I pulled into the space where my personal vehicle, a Jeep Wrangler, should have been parked. There was nothing but undisturbed snow. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and checked for messages. Nothing. No call about a stolen vehicle. No alert from my security system. Then I saw it. A bright orange sticker attached to my garage door, notice of violation and vehicle impound. Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I read the notice 3 times before the words fully registered. According to the document, my truck with the plow attachment was classified as commercial equipment, specifically prohibited by HOA Covenant Section 7.3.12. The vehicle had been towed at 7:30 that morning to an impound lot in Parker, 20 miles away. There was a fine of $500, plus storage fees of $75 per day, plus the towing charge of $350. I would need to appear before the HOA board for a hearing before the vehicle would be released, but it wasn't my truck they'd towed. That was in the driveway right now. I walked around to look at my Jeep's usual spot more carefully. The tracks in the snow told the story. A flatbed tow truck had backed in and taken my personal Jeep. I checked the notice again. The vehicle description was completely wrong. They'd listed it as a white commercial pickup truck with plow attachment and emergency lights. My phone rang. Sheriff's Department. Ryan, we've got a situation developing. The storms shifted south and we're getting reports of a second wave moving in. Should hit around 2 this afternoon. We need you on standby. Copy that. I'll be ready. I hung up and immediately called the impound lot number listed on the HOA notice. A bored voice answered, "Parker Towing and Impound. This is Ryan Morrison. You apparently towed a vehicle from my property this morning. I need it released immediately. You got an authorization number?" "No, I don't have an authorization number. The vehicle was towed without my permission, and I need it back. I'm the County Emergency Services Coordinator, and we have another storm system moving in." "Sir, we can't release any vehicle without proper authorization. The HOA that called in the tow has to approve the release." "Then you gotta pay all the fees. Then we can schedule a pickup time." "You don't understand. That vehicle isn't even the one described in the violation notice. This is a mistake." "You'll have to take that up with the HOA, sir. We just do what we're contracted to do." I called the HOA office number. It went straight to voicemail. Patricia Henderson's voice, dripping with saccharine sweetness, informed me that the office was closed due to inclement weather and would reopen Monday morning. Monday. That was 2 days away. I left a message explaining the situation and demanding an immediate callback. Then I called Patricia's cell phone, which was listed in the subdivision directory. She answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Ryan Morrison on Sycamore Lane. Your security officer had my vehicle towed this morning." "Mr. Morrison, yes, I'm aware of the situation. You were operating commercial equipment in the subdivision in direct violation of our covenants. I was responding to emergencies. I'm the County Emergency Services Coordinator. And the vehicle you towed isn't even the truck I was driving. You towed my personal Jeep by mistake. Our enforcement officer observed you operating a white commercial vehicle with a plow and emergency lights. That vehicle was on the property and we acted within our rights as defined in the covenants you signed when you purchased your home. Patricia, listen to me very carefully. Another storm system is moving in this afternoon. I need that vehicle. People's lives could depend on it." "That's not the HOA's concern, Mr. Morrison. We have rules for a reason. If we make exceptions for one resident, we'd have to make exceptions for everyone. The vehicle will be returned when you've paid the fines and appeared before the board. My Jeep doesn't have a plow or emergency lights." "Your people towed the wrong vehicle. According to Dennis's report, the vehicle was white and had county government plates. Is that correct?" I closed my eyes. "My Jeep did have county government plates because I used it for work when I wasn't operating the plow truck." "Yes, but then the tow was valid. I suggest you review the covenants more carefully, Mr. Morrison. We'll schedule your hearing for next week." She hung up. I stood in my driveway in the middle of a blizzard aftermath and tried to process what had just happened. An HOA had impounded a county emergency vehicle because of a subdivision covenant. The absurdity was almost overwhelming. My radio crackled again. "All units, we're getting updated weather models. The second system is intensifying. Expected to hit at 1 p.m., earlier than initially forecast. This one's potentially worse than the first wave. Ryan, we need you at the Emergency Operations Center ASAP." I looked at my plow truck. It was a county vehicle, which meant it was technically government property, but it was also registered to me as the authorized operator. If I drove it into the subdivision again, the HOA would probably try to have it towed too. I needed to solve this problem fast. I called my supervisor, Janet Kozlowski, the County Emergency Management Director. She answered immediately. "Janet, we have a problem." I explained the situation as concisely as possible. There was a long silence. Then, "Are you telling me that an HOA towed a county emergency vehicle during a declared state of emergency?" "They towed my personal Jeep thinking it was the emergency vehicle, but yes, essentially." That's interference with emergency operations at minimum, possibly obstruction of governmental functions. Give me the HOA president's name and number. I provided Patricia's information. Janet hung up without another word. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Patricia. Mr. Morrison, I've just been informed by some woman claiming to be with the county that your vehicle has official status. I want to clarify that our covenants make no exceptions for government vehicles. This subdivision is private property. Mrs. Henderson, I strongly suggest you authorize the release of my Jeep immediately. I will not be bullied by county bureaucrats. The vehicle will be released through proper channels. She hung up again. I was beginning to understand why my next-door neighbor had described Patricia as the kind of person who would write you up for having the wrong shade of beige on your mailbox. He hadn't been exaggerating. I drove the Plow truck to the County Emergency Operations Center, a reinforced building near the county seat in Castle Rock. The EOC was chaos. Multiple screens showed radar, traffic cameras, and emergency response maps. Personnel from every county agency were coordinating the response to the ongoing crisis. Janet saw me come in and immediately pulled me aside. Your HOA president is a piece of work. She cited covenant section after covenant section at me. Told me the county has no jurisdiction over private property. When I explained that interfering with emergency operations during a state of emergency is a crime, she said she'd sue the county for harassment. She's got my Jeep impounded 20 miles from here and another storm's coming in an hour. Use a county pool vehicle for now. But Ryan, this is bigger than your Jeep. If this HOA thinks they can interfere with emergency operations, we need to make it crystal clear that they can't. I've got the county attorney's office looking into it. The next several hours were another frantic scramble. The second wave of the storm hit at 1:15, just as forecast. This one brought freezing rain mixed with snow, coating everything in ice before burying it under another 18 inches of powder. We had power lines down across the county. More roof collapses. A fire at a residential home where the fire department couldn't reach the location because the roads were impassable. I coordinated a response using a private citizen snowmobile to get firefighters to the scene. By 8 that evening, the second storm was finally moving east. Douglas County looked like a disaster zone. Some areas had received more than 5 feet of total accumulation. The governor had requested federal emergency assistance. National Guard units were being mobilized, and I still didn't have my Jeep back. I finally got home around 9 p.m. Mrs. Chen had left a container of hot soup on my doorstep with a note thanking me for plowing the streets that morning. At least somebody appreciated it. I heated up the soup and collapsed on my couch, too exhausted to even take off my boots. My phone buzzed. Email from Patricia Henderson, sent to all Meadowbrook Estates residents. Important community notice. Due to the recent storm emergency, some residents have taken it upon themselves to violate community covenants under the guise of helping. Please be reminded that all community standards remain in effect regardless of weather conditions. Several violations have been documented and will be addressed at the next board meeting. Specifically, residents are reminded that commercial vehicles, oversized trucks, and equipment are not permitted on community streets or in driveways. The HOA takes its responsibility to maintain property values seriously, and we thank you for your cooperation in keeping Meadowbrook Estates beautiful and compliant. I read it twice. She'd actually sent out a community-wide email essentially criticizing me for plowing the streets during a historic blizzard. The comments section below was already filling with responses. Tom Prescott from Maple Drive. Are you kidding me right now? Ryan Morrison plowed our streets when the county couldn't get here. My wife went into labor during the storm and the ambulance could only reach us because the roads were clear. This is insane. Jennifer Walsh from Oak Lane. The county truck that plowed our streets saved lives. My elderly father needed emergency medication. This HOA is out of control. But there were other responses too. Karen Whitmore from Aspen Court. Rules are rules. If we don't enforce the covenants, our property values will plummet. The HOA is right to take action. Brenda Sutherland from Birch Way. I agree with Karen. We bought here because of the standards. We can't just ignore them when it's inconvenient. I was too tired to be angry. I set my phone aside and tried to sleep, but my mind kept churning. The legal implications were serious. Interfering with emergency operations during a declared disaster was a criminal offense in Colorado. But Patricia seemed convinced that the HOA's covenants superseded everything, including common sense and possibly the law. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and temperatures in the teens. The massive cleanup operation was underway. Schools were closed. Many businesses remained shut. Interstate 25 was partially reopened. I spent the morning at the EOC helping coordinate recovery efforts, mutual aid requests, damage assessments, resource allocation. At 10 a.m., Janet called me into her office. With her was Marcus Thornton, the Douglas County attorney. Ryan, sit down. Marcus has been reviewing the situation with your HOA. Marcus, a serious man in his early 50s with steel gray hair, flipped open a folder. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the covenants for Meadowbrook Estates. I've also reviewed Colorado revised statutes regarding HOA authority and emergency operations. The HOA's position is legally problematic on several fronts. Can you get my Jeep back? I've already done that. I contacted the impound lot directly with a county attorney letter. Your vehicle was released an hour ago and is currently being delivered to your residence. The county will pay the fees and seek reimbursement from the HOA. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. But that's not the main issue here. The HOA's actions during a declared state of emergency constitute interference with governmental functions under CRS 18-8503. The towing of a vehicle being used by a government official in the course of emergency duties is particularly egregious. Additionally, their covenants cannot legally supersede state emergency management statutes. Janet leaned forward. We want to make sure this doesn't happen again, Ryan, not just to you but to any emergency responder. What if a firefighter who lives in that subdivision needs to use his personal vehicle during an emergency? What if an off-duty paramedic has medical equipment in their car? What are our options? I asked. I'm sending a formal letter to the HOA board today outlining the legal issues and demanding they amend their covenants to include exceptions for emergency operations. If they refuse, the county can seek an injunction. We could also pursue criminal charges for the interference that already occurred. Patricia Henderson isn't going to back down easily. Then she'll learn an expensive lesson. Marcus closed the folder. I've dealt with overreaching HOAs before. They often operate under the misconception that their covenants are the supreme law of their little kingdoms. They're not. I headed home to check on my Jeep. Sure enough, it was parked in my driveway, apparently undamaged. There was a new notice on my garage door, though. This one informed me that my HOA hearing was scheduled for Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. in the community center. Attendance mandatory. Tuesday was spent continuing recovery efforts. The National Guard arrived with heavy equipment. Federal emergency management teams were setting up. The disaster declaration meant funding would be available for repairs and assistance. I worked 16-hour days coordinating between local, state, and federal agencies. Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from Marcus Thornton. Thought you'd want to know. I sent the letter yesterday via certified mail and email. Patricia Henderson called me this morning. Let me guess. She's not cooperating. She informed me that the HOA is a private organization, that the county has no authority over their covenants, and that she would see me in court if necessary. She also said that your hearing tonight would proceed as planned. So, what happens now? I'll be attending your hearing as a representative of the county. This should be interesting. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center was a modest building near the subdivision entrance, typically used for social events and board meetings. When I arrived at 6:45, the parking lot was nearly full. Apparently word had gotten around and residents wanted to see the showdown. Inside, the main room was set up with a long table at the front where the 5 HOA board members sat. Patricia Henderson was in the center, flanked by her Vice President Harold Simmons, Treasurer Linda Marsh, Secretary Karen Whitmore, and board member Robert Chen. I was surprised to see Robert there. He was Mrs. Chen's husband, my next-door neighbor. He gave me an apologetic look. The room was packed with at least 70 residents. Tom Prescott was there, Jennifer Walsh, many others I recognized. Marcus Thornton was seated in the front row in a sharp suit, looking every bit the attorney he was. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. We're here tonight to address multiple covenant violations by resident Ryan Morrison of 742 Sycamore Lane. Mr. Morrison, you're accused of operating commercial equipment in the subdivision, specifically a white pickup truck with plow attachment and emergency lighting. How do you respond? I stood. Mrs. Henderson, I'm the Emergency Services Coordinator for Douglas County. I was responding to emergencies during a historic blizzard and state of emergency. The vehicle in question is a county emergency vehicle that I'm authorized to operate. The covenants make no exception for emergency vehicles. Section 7.3.12 clearly states that commercial vehicles and equipment are prohibited. Marcus stood. Excuse me, Mrs. Henderson. I'm Marcus Thornton, Douglas County Attorney. May I address the board? Patricia's expression tightened. This is a closed HOA hearing. This is a hearing regarding governmental emergency operations, which makes it very much the county's business. May I approach? Patricia looked like she'd bitten into a lemon, but she nodded. Marcus walked to the front and handed documents to each board member. What you're reading is a legal opinion regarding HOA covenant authority during declared emergencies. The bottom line is simple. HOA covenants cannot prohibit or restrict emergency operations conducted by governmental agencies or their authorized personnel. Colorado Revised Statutes Section 2922-105 specifically grants emergency services personnel broad authority during declared disasters. Your covenants as private contractual obligations cannot supersede state law. Linda Marsh, the treasurer, was reading the document carefully. She looked up. Is this really saying we broke the law? What I'm saying is that the towing of Mr. Morrison's vehicle during a state of emergency, while he was engaged in emergency operations, constitutes interference with governmental functions. That's a Class 2 misdemeanor under Colorado law. It's punishable by fines and potentially jail time. The room erupted. Residents were talking over each other. Patricia was banging her gavel. Order! This is ridiculous. We were enforcing our covenants. Marcus's voice cut through the noise. Your covenants don't give you the right to interfere with emergency operations. If a fire truck needed to park on someone's lawn to access a burning house, would you tow it? If a police car was blocking a driveway during an investigation, Would you cite the officer? Harold Simmons, the vice president, spoke up. That's different. Those are clearly emergency situations. And a historic blizzard with multiple casualties and property damage isn't. Mr. Morrison spent that night and the following day coordinating response to dozens of life-threatening situations. He personally helped save lives. And your organization decided that the aesthetic standards of your subdivision were more important. Tom Prescott stood up from the audience. My wife and my newborn daughter are healthy today because Ryan made sure the ambulance could reach our house. This hearing is garbage. Jennifer Walsh stood too. My father is alive because Ryan coordinated getting his medication delivered during the storm. You should be thanking him, not fining him. More residents stood, voicing support. Patricia was pounding her gavel repeatedly. Sit down, all of you, we have procedures. I held up my hand. Let's all calm down. Mrs. Henderson, I understand you believe you were enforcing the covenants as written, but Mr. Thornton is correct. Emergency operations have to take precedence. Lives are more important than rules about vehicle types. Karen Whitmore, the secretary, spoke up. But if we make exceptions, where does it end? What's to stop every resident from claiming they need a commercial truck or an RV or whatever? Marcus responded, that's why the exception is specifically for documented emergency operations personnel acting in their official capacity. Mr. Morrison isn't asking to park a fleet of trucks in his driveway. He's asking not to be penalized for doing his job, which happens to be saving lives during disasters. Robert Chen cleared his throat. Patricia, I think we need to reconsider this. My wife told me what Ryan did during the storm. He plowed our streets at 3 in the morning before heading out to county emergencies. Our street would have been impassable for days without that. Patricia glared at him. We have a responsibility to all residents to maintain standards. We have a responsibility to all residents to use common sense, Robert countered. I move that we dismiss all charges against Mr. Morrison and amend our covenants to include exemptions for emergency services personnel. Linda Marsh immediately seconded the motion. Patricia's face was red. This is inappropriate. We haven't completed the hearing. Marcus interjected, the board can vote at any time. That's your own bylaws, section 4.7. Harold looked at Patricia uncertainly. Maybe we should vote. This is getting out of hand. Fine. Patricia practically spit the word. All in favor of dismissing the charges and amending the covenants. Robert Chen raised his hand. Linda Marsh raised hers. After a moment, Harold Simmons reluctantly raised his. Opposed. Patricia and Karen Whitmore raised their hands. The motion passes 3-2. This hearing is adjourned. The room broke into applause. Patricia gathered her papers and stormed out. Karen followed her. The other board members looked relieved. I approached Robert Chen. Thank you for that. It was the right thing to do. My wife would have killed me if I'd voted the other way. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, Patricia has been a problem for a while. She treats the HOA like it's her personal fiefdom. A lot of us on the board are getting tired of it. Marcus shook my hand. That went better than expected. They'll need to formally amend the covenants and submit the changes. I'll review whatever they draft. In the meantime, you're clear to operate as needed. Tom Prescott came up with his phone out. Ryan, my wife and I wanted to show you something. He pulled up a photo of a tiny newborn in a hospital blanket. Amelia Rose Prescott, born at 7 pounds 3 ounces. Healthy as can be. The paramedics said if we'd been delayed another 20 minutes, things could have gone very wrong. Thank you. I felt a lump in my throat. Congratulations. She's beautiful. Over the next few days, life started returning to normal. The snow was gradually cleared. Schools reopened. Businesses resumed operations. The county shifted from emergency response to recovery mode. My role became less frantic, more administrative, processing federal aid applications, documenting response efforts, compiling after-action reports. But the situation with Patricia Henderson wasn't over. The following Tuesday, I received a call from Marcus Thornton. "Ryan, we have a development. The HOA board voted yesterday to formally amend their covenants as discussed, but Patricia Henderson is refusing to sign off on the changes. She's claiming as board president she has veto power." "Does she?" "Not according to their own bylaws. The bylaws state that a simple majority of the board can amend covenants with proper notice to residents. She's holding the paperwork hostage in some misguided power play. What can we do?" "The other board members can override her, but they're nervous about the confrontation. There's going to be a special board meeting Thursday night. You might want to attend." Thursday evening, the community center was packed again. Apparently the drama of the HOA board had become the subdivision's favorite entertainment. Patricia called the meeting to order with obvious reluctance. The first order of business was the covenant amendment. Robert Chen presented the proposed changes. The amendment added section 7.3.13. Notwithstanding any other provisions of these covenants, authorized emergency services personnel shall be exempt from vehicle restrictions when operating in their official capacity during declared emergencies or while responding to urgent situations. This exemption includes but is not limited to law enforcement, fire services, emergency medical services, and emergency management personnel. It was straightforward and reasonable. Patricia immediately objected. "This language is too broad. It could be abused." Linda Marsh countered. "How?" "It's specifically limited to declared emergencies and official capacity." "What's the concern?" "My concern is that we're opening the door to all kinds of violations. Today, it's emergency vehicles. Tomorrow, it's commercial contractors, delivery trucks, RVs. The covenants exist for a reason." Harold Simmons, who'd been quiet, spoke up. "Patricia, I've been on this board for 5 years. I've watched you write up residents for having their garbage cans visible 12 hours after collection day, for having the wrong mulch color in their flower beds, for parking their car facing the wrong direction in their own driveway. This amendment isn't about maintaining standards. It's about basic human decency and legal compliance." Patricia stared at him. "Excuse me." The county attorney made it clear we broke the law. "Ryan Morrison literally saves lives for a living, and we harassed him for doing his job. I'm embarrassed that I didn't speak up sooner. I vote to approve the amendment as written." "Seconded," said Linda Marsh. "Third," said Robert Chen. "All in favor?" Harold asked, taking control of the meeting. 3 hands went up. Patricia and Karen sat rigid, arms crossed. Motion passes. "Patricia, we need you to sign the amendment filing so we can submit it to the county recorder's office." "I refuse." The room went silent. Robert Chen leaned forward. "You don't have the authority to refuse." "The board has voted. I'm the board president. Nothing gets filed without my signature." Marcus Thornton stood from the audience. "Mrs. Henderson, that's factually incorrect. Under Colorado law and your own bylaws, any board member can file approved amendments. Your signature isn't required if the board has voted. You're welcome to add a dissenting note to the record, but you cannot block this." Patricia stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. "I've dedicated 5 years to this community. I've worked tirelessly to maintain our standards and property values, and this is how I'm treated. Fine. I quit. I resign from the board effective immediately. You can deal with this mess yourselves." She grabbed her purse and walked out. Karen Whitmore hesitated, then followed her. The room erupted in conversation. Harold took a deep breath. Okay then. I guess I'm the acting president now. Robert, can you take the amendment paperwork and get it filed tomorrow? Absolutely. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. As residents filed out, several stopped to shake my hand or thank me again for the storm response. Mrs. Chen invited me over for dinner on Sunday. Tom Prescott said he and his wife wanted to name me as their daughter's godfather. I walked out into the cold February night feeling cautiously optimistic. The immediate crisis was resolved. The covenants would be amended. Patricia was off the board. Maybe things would finally settle down. I should have known better. Friday afternoon, I was at my desk at the county offices when Janet Kozlowski appeared at my door with a strange expression. "Ryan, you need to see this." She handed me her phone. It showed a local news website. The headline read, "HOA President Claims County Retaliation After Vehicle Tow Dispute." I skimmed the article. Patricia Henderson had given an interview claiming the county had engaged in a coordinated harassment campaign against the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA. She alleged that I had abused my position to intimidate the board into reversing a legitimate covenant enforcement action. She claimed the county attorney had threatened her with false criminal charges. She was quoted extensively about government overreach and property rights. "This is insane," I said. "Keep reading." Further down, the article mentioned that Patricia had filed a formal complaint with the county commissioners and was considering a lawsuit against the county for civil rights violations and harassment. "She's actually suing us." "Not yet, but she's threatening to." The commissioners want a briefing on the whole situation. Marcus is preparing a response. But Ryan, this could get messy. She's playing the victim card hard and some people will buy it. Over the next week, the story gained traction. A few local news outlets picked it up. The angle was usually framed as government overreach vs. HOA rights, or some variation. Patricia gave multiple interviews, portraying herself as a dedicated volunteer who was bullied by county officials for trying to enforce rules. The comments sections were predictably divided. Half the people thought Patricia was a petty tyrant who got what she deserved. The other half saw her as standing up to government intrusion. Nobody seemed interested in the actual facts of what had happened. Then the social media pile-on started. Someone created a Facebook group called Support Patricia Henderson and HOA Rights. It gained 3,000 members in 2 days. There were counter groups supporting me. Local HOA advocacy organizations got involved, property rights activists. It spiraled completely out of control. The county commissioners called a public hearing to address the complaint. It was scheduled for a Tuesday evening in the commissioners' chambers at the county building. Marcus Thornton told me I needed to attend and possibly testify. The hearing room was packed beyond capacity. News cameras lined the back wall. Patricia was there with an attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Victoria Masters who specialized in HOA law. Residents from Meadowbrook Estates filled several rows. County staff and other concerned citizens packed the rest of the space. The commission chairman, a stern man named Douglas Fletcher, called the hearing to order. "We're here to address a complaint filed by Mrs. Patricia Henderson regarding actions taken by Douglas County Emergency Services and the county attorney's office. Mrs. Henderson, you have 15 minutes to present your complaint." Patricia approached the podium. She dressed conservatively and looked every bit the aggrieved citizen. "Thank you, Commissioner. I served as president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA for 5 years. During that time, I worked tirelessly to maintain our community standards and protect property values for all residents. Following the recent blizzard, We had an incident where a resident violated our covenants by operating commercial equipment in the subdivision. She went on to describe the towing of my vehicle, carefully omitting that it was during an active emergency response, and that they'd towed the wrong vehicle initially. She characterized the county's response as heavy-handed intimidation. The county attorney threatened me with criminal prosecution for enforcing a legal covenant. Mr. Morrison used his position to coerce the HOA board into changing our rules. This is government overreach at its worst. Her attorney, Victoria Masters, added legal arguments about HOA autonomy and property rights. It was a well-rehearsed presentation that made Patricia sound like a victim of bureaucratic bullying. Then it was the county's turn. Marcus Thornton presented a detailed timeline of events with supporting documentation. The emergency declaration, my response activities during the storm, the towing incident, his letter explaining the legal issues, the HOA hearing, Patricia's refusal to implement the board's vote. The facts are straightforward, Marcus concluded. Mrs. Henderson's organization interfered with emergency operations during a declared disaster. When we explained the legal problems with their actions, she doubled down. When her own board voted to correct the issue, she attempted to block their decision and then resigned. This isn't government overreach. This is appropriate oversight of actions that potentially violated state law. Commissioner Fletcher asked, "Mr. Morrison, would you like to speak?" I approached the podium. I'm not interested in punishing anyone or making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. During the blizzard, I was doing my job. The HOA had concerns about covenants, which I understand. We worked through it, found a legal solution, and moved forward. I don't understand why Mrs. Henderson is trying to turn this into something it's not. Patricia stood up. Because you abused your power. You used your position to intimidate and threaten people who were just trying to follow the rules. I never threatened anyone. I explained the situation and asked for cooperation during an emergency. The county attorney explained the law. Your own board agreed to make reasonable changes. After you pressured them, Commissioner Fletcher banged his gavel. Mrs. Henderson, you'll have another chance to speak. Mr. Morrison, continue. There's not much else to say. I helped coordinate the response to a historic blizzard. We saved lives and property. I'm proud of that work. I'm sorry Mrs. Henderson feels aggrieved, but the county acted appropriately. The commissioners asked questions for another 30 minutes. They asked Patricia why she thought enforcing parking rules during a blizzard was appropriate. She claimed she didn't know I was actively responding to emergencies, which was contradicted by the timestamps on all the emergency radio traffic. They asked Marcus if criminal charges were still being considered. He said the county was focused on ensuring future compliance, not punishment for past actions. Finally, Commissioner Fletcher announced they would take the matter under advisement and issue a decision within 2 weeks. As we filed out, a reporter approached me. Mr. Morrison, do you think HOAs have too much power? I think HOAs serve an important purpose when they're run reasonably, but common sense and public safety have to take precedence over rigid rule enforcement. What would you say to Mrs. Henderson? I'd say I hope we can all move forward. There are no winners when situations like this escalate unnecessarily. Patricia was doing her own interview a few feet away. I heard her say something about unaccountable government bureaucrats and walked away. The next 2 weeks were tense. The story continued to percolate through local media and social networks. I received supportive messages from other emergency services personnel who'd had their own HOA nightmares. I also received angry emails from HOA advocates accusing me of trying to destroy property rights. The commissioners issued their decision on a Friday afternoon. It was a detailed 12-page document that I read 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. The decision found that Douglas County had acted appropriately in all respects. Patricia Henderson's complaint was dismissed with prejudice. The commissioners went further, directing the county attorney to develop guidelines for HOAs regarding emergency services and to conduct outreach to all HOAs in the county to ensure they understood relevant laws. Most significantly, they made a criminal referral to the district attorney's office. The decision noted that while the county had tried to resolve the matter cooperatively, Patricia Henderson's continued interference and attempts to block her own board's remedial actions suggested a willful disregard for public safety. The district attorney would determine if criminal charges for obstruction or interference with governmental functions were warranted. I called Marcus. "Did you expect this, the criminal referral?" "No, but the commissioners take public safety seriously." Patricia's media campaign probably worked against her. It showed she wasn't just making a mistake. She genuinely believes her HOA covenants supersede emergency operations law. That's a problem. 2 weeks later, the district attorney's office announced charges. Patricia Henderson was charged with 1 count of obstruction of government operations, a Class 2 misdemeanor, and 1 count of interference with emergency services, also a Class 2 misdemeanor. Maximum penalty was 12 months in jail and $2,500 in fines for each count, though first-time offenders rarely got jail time for misdemeanors. The charging decision made the news again. Public opinion seemed to shift. It was one thing to support HOA rights in the abstract. It was another to defend someone criminally charged for interfering with blizzard response. Patricia's support groups quieted down. Even Victoria Masters, her attorney, issued a statement suggesting they were exploring a plea agreement. The case moved through the system slowly. Arraignment, pre-trial conferences, discovery. I had to provide statements and documentation. Marcus's office coordinated with the prosecutors. The whole process was tedious and time-consuming. Meanwhile, life went on. Spring arrived. The snow melted. Meadowbrook Estates got a new HOA board president, a reasonable retired engineer named Paul Rodriguez, who immediately instituted reforms. The covenant amendments were finalized and filed. The subdivision actually became a nicer place to live once people stopped worrying about citation patrols. Patricia's criminal case went to trial in late June. I had to testify for about an hour, walking through the timeline of the blizzard response and the towing incident. Patricia's defense attorney tried to argue that she'd been acting in good faith to enforce the covenants and didn't understand the legal implications. The prosecution presented evidence of multiple conversations where the law was explained to her, which she dismissed or ignored. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and found Patricia guilty on both counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for August. At the sentencing hearing, the prosecution recommended probation, community service, and fines. Patricia's attorney asked for leniency, noting she had no prior criminal record and had already suffered public humiliation and the loss of her HOA position. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra Martinez, was less sympathetic. "Mrs. Henderson, I've reviewed this case carefully. What concerns me most is that you still don't seem to understand what you did wrong. Emergency services personnel put their lives on the line to help others. During a historic blizzard, Mr. Morrison was working around the clock to coordinate rescue and response efforts. Instead of appreciating that, you had his vehicle towed because you believed your subdivision's parking rules were more important than saving lives. That shows a stunning lack of judgment and perspective. She sentenced Patricia to 1 year of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service specifically with emergency services organizations, a $2,000 fine, and required attendance at a course on emergency management and public safety. Perhaps working alongside the people you interfered with will help you understand the importance of their work, Judge Martinez added. Patricia looked stunned. Her attorney immediately filed a notice of appeal, but I doubted it would go anywhere. As I left the courthouse, Tom Prescott was waiting outside with his wife and baby Amelia. "We wanted to be here," he said, "to support you. You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, we did. You're Amelia's godfather. That means something." We talked for a few minutes, then I headed back to work. There were always more emergencies to prepare for, more plans to coordinate, more supplies to requisition. The emergency services coordinator job never really stopped, but the HOA situation was finally resolved. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Patricia Henderson, handwritten on plain stationery. "Mr. Morrison, I'm writing this as part of my probation requirements, but also because I've been doing a lot of thinking. I was wrong. I let my pride and my belief that I was protecting the community blind me to common sense and basic human decency. You were helping people, and I treated you like a criminal for parking the wrong kind of truck. I'm sorry. I'm starting my community service next week at the fire department, and I'm told I'll be learning about emergency response procedures. I expect it will be humbling. I hope someday you can forgive me. Sincerely, Patricia Henderson." I read the letter twice. It seemed genuine. People could change, could learn from their mistakes. I decided to believe she meant it. I wrote back a short response. "Mrs. Henderson, thank you for your letter. I accept your apology. I hope your community service gives you a new perspective on emergency services work. We're all part of the same community, and we all need to work together when disasters strike. No hard feelings. Ryan Morrison." I mailed it and put the whole situation behind me. That fall, Douglas County did a comprehensive review of the blizzard response. Despite the chaos and the unprecedented nature of the storm, we'd managed to keep casualties minimal and coordinate effective assistance. I received a commendation from the county commissioners and a letter of appreciation from the governor's office. The HOA covenant amendments I'd pushed for became a model. Marcus Thornton worked with the state legislature to draft a bill clarifying HOA obligations during emergencies. It passed unanimously and was signed into law. Now, every HOA in Colorado was required to include emergency services exemptions in their covenants. Meadowbrook Estates continued to be a pleasant place to live. Paul Rodriguez proved to be a fair and reasonable HOA president. The subdivision maintained its standards without the oppressive enforcement tactics of the previous board. Neighbors looked out for each other. Community events were actually enjoyable. And when winter rolled around again, nobody complained when I fired up my plow truck to clear the streets during the first snowstorm of the season. Mrs. Chen brought over hot chocolate while I was shoveling my front walk. "You know, Ryan, I'm glad you moved here. Even with all the drama, you made this neighborhood better." "Just doing my job," I said. "No, you did more than that. You showed people what really matters. Rules are fine, but people come first. Some folks needed to learn that lesson the hard way." I thought about Patricia Henderson, hopefully learning similar lessons during her community service. I thought about the hundreds of people who'd been helped during the blizzard. I thought about baby Amelia, healthy and growing because emergency services could reach her mother in time. "Yeah," I said, "people come first." Mrs. Chen smiled and headed back to her house. I finished shoveling and went inside to warm up. My radio was quiet. No emergencies at the moment. Just a peaceful evening in a well-maintained subdivision in Douglas County, Colorado, exactly how it should be.